Want to know the one thing writers in my program consistently admit to struggling with? Dialogue. The reality is dialogue can be really, really hard for some writers. So I'm going to share 3 tips to make your dialogue sound more like people actually talk. Let's go. Okay, here's a confession. I actually love writing dialogue. Before I was a novelist, I was a playwright. So dialogue is actually the part of fiction writing that comes the easiest to me. It's all the stuff around it that was harder to learn. But that said, I think my natural ear for dialogue has also helped me recognize why some writers' dialogue is not working. So, what are the mistakes I commonly see and how do we fix them? First, don't have characters say each other's names. You know, I think this is kind of funny. There's some things that only seem to happen in books or TV shows or in movies and rarely in real life. And one of them is when a character feels the need to say another character's name before making a statement. You know, like, Gina, I said I wanted that apple. Or, Damien, why are you looking at me like that? Like, it's a book/TV/movie thing. It's not really a real life thing. In real life, you'd be more likely to say, I wanted that apple. Or, why are you looking at me like that? If your characters are constantly dropping each other's names, just cut them, you know? The same goes for words like look and listen, by the way. No one actually says, look, I've been meaning to tell you something. Or, listen, how did you really like that Italian dinner? Like, no one does that. So go ahead, rack your brain. Try to recall a time when someone used those words to prelude a statement. But yeah, my stance remains, it just doesn't really happen. So improve your dialogue immediately by cutting out the excessive use of names and then the words look and listen. Your characters will just sound a lot more authentic and, you know, relatable, like people really talk. Okay, tip number 2 is to really lean into the nonverbal communication. As human beings, we actually communicate a great deal without speaking at all. In fact, we probably communicate the vast majority of our expression through nonverbal means. I'm talking about like a shrug, you know, a side eye, the pursing of the lips, a sigh, an uncomfortable, you know, scratch of the ear, rubbing the neck. We have this constant debate in my program over whether people actually roll their eyes. For example, I insist I've never seen someone roll their eyes, at least not since middle school, but some people, you know, some writers in my program say they have witnessed people doing eye rolls. But if, you know, whatever your stance is on that, an eye roll might count. As you write and revise, ask yourself, are these words that I've written something that a person would actually say out loud, or in real life, is this more likely to be expressed non-verbally? Because the beauty of fiction writing is that you can describe thoughts, feelings, behavior. It doesn't need to be verbalized in order to be clearly communicated to the reader. You get to be in their head. So a rule of thumb I actually have for myself is when I'm revising my dialogue, when anything is said aloud, I ask, is there a way this could be communicated without being said aloud? Just by doing that exercise, I tend to make my dialogue much better. And the last technique is don't let your characters talk for too long. Okay, in real life, people, we just don't really let each other talk endlessly without interruptions. You know, even the most dominant figures like your great uncle who loves to lecture you on why your politics are wrong, even those people face interruptions from time to time. You know, the doorbell rings or someone coughs or a kid starts screaming. So when it comes to fictional dialogue, if someone is speaking for like a paragraph or more without interruption, it's probably too much. I mean, unless it's an actual speech or sermon in that kind of context. I'm not saying a character can't go on and on. I mean, that's realistic. You know, there are monologues. There are people who have a lot to say, or chatty Cathys, or people who don't shut up. You know, these people can be in your book, but they can be interrupted during their long soliloquy, right? Like it can be even a clearing of their own throat, or someone else sneezes, or someone spots a spider. There are actually a couple of reasons why it's important to have these interruptions. First, it's not realistic for someone to speak endlessly without being interrupted, like I said, by something, by their surroundings, their own body, another person, you know, thoughts, a phone ringing or buzzing, a stomach growling. But it's also important because if a dialogue passage goes on too long, a reader can lose sight of what's actually happening around the thing the person's saying? What's happening in the scene? Where is the speaker now? If they started their rant while they were at a red light, has the red light changed to green? Are they driving again? Did they ever make a turn? And what about the listener in the passenger seat? Are they engaged or are they distracted by texting or looking out the window? We need periodic check-ins to give the reader a clear mental picture of the scene that's unfolding. So any long stream of dialogue by a character should be interrupted, I would say at least every couple of lines, roughly speaking. I think that's a good rule of thumb. And those are my 3 tips for writing dialogue that sounds like people actually talk. I hope they were helpful. Speaking of writing, are you writing a book or do you want to write a book? Because if so, I would love to hear from you. When I'm not writing, my mission is to help writers write their dream books. I love it. And if you're curious to know more, I have a video walking you through my 4 notebooks method for writing a novel. You can get that video along with my free template for using the 4 notebooks method to write your novel by applying to my program, the Book Incubator, at the link below. It's a 12-month MFA alternative, and the application is just 2 questions. I just ask you to tell me a little bit about you and your book or your book idea. It'll take you less than 5 minutes. So go to the link below or go to thebookincubator.com. I really hope to hear from you.